Hey everybody, it's Magic Prepper. I wanted to touch base with a vulnerability regarding SHTF a lot of people probably don't think about, and it's going to be up to the prepared citizen to actually protect these facilities and their staff during times of crisis, because without that protection, you can't necessarily assume that these services will be offered, and without those services, you lose a major staple of having a community. Of course, having community is going to be imperative to rebuilding and maintaining any level of cohesion you might want after an emergency. So, what exactly is it? Well, a critical component of community stability is healthcare. We're going to need to make sure there's some form of healthcare available. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because, well, not only do we have examples from around the world right now where this is becoming critically important, but we also have a lot of people in the comments section here in the preparedness community that state things regarding receiving medical help after a major injury or some kind of sustained situation that would require a medical professional rather than just being able to apply first aid. And this came up because of the concept of tourniquets being discussed regarding the fact that, well, if you use one, great, but then what are you going to do after? And if you don't have a doctor or a surgeon, you might as well just not even apply it, right? Which is not my mentality at all. I think it's a good idea to carry medical gear and equipment and be able to know how to use it and then hopefully find yourself the help you need thereafter. But regardless, that's why this is such a big deal, because with the situation right now in Ukraine as well as in Gaza, healthcare facilities are being targeted and used in the sense of military operations, which is creating a crisis regarding the fact that healthcare is no longer accessible or even something that can be received by the average person who's still within that war zone area. So I do want to mention Midway USA is the biggest supporter of the channel, and thanks to them, I can get out here, give you this information, and also, work with equipment and preparedness related gear that helps the rest of the community understand what might be worth having and what might not be worth having. So big thanks to Midway USA. Now, the World Health Organization, I know, everybody's favorite, but of course, they are all over the place, right? Well, they admit that with Ukraine during this crisis, health has to remain a priority pillar in the sense of making sure that healthcare workers and the facilities are being protected. And they have to remain safe, functional, and accessible. And that's something that they believe should be a priority regardless of what's happening on the war front. And I agree with that because, in all honesty, there are people who require healthcare in order to survive. It's getting a little bit windy out here. Welcome to North Dakota. You can't have a nice day without being blown all over the place. Now, here's the thing. You have to think about this for your own community. I live in a small town. We have a health facility. We have an urgent care center that also has the ability to do more than that as well. It is an emergency room. But it's staffed by a minimum amount of people. It doesn't have a lot of security, and we have a small police force. Why would healthcare workers continue to show up to work if there isn't viable protection there for them, or if their facility isn't being properly protected? And that's what's being demonstrated right now on these war fronts. Okay, Kiev just had to evacuate 2 hospitals because a Belarusian KGB chief or ex-chief or whatever he is claimed that they were housing soldiers there. Now, even if they aren't housing soldiers there, they've just been basically painted as a military target, regardless of the validity of whether or not there are soldiers. This wind is starting to make me upset. And I thought Florida was bad. So, now this healthcare facility has to be evacuated. All these people are being removed from it, even if they need the care that can only be provided at a healthcare facility because, well, suddenly just became a military target that is concerned with the idea of airstrikes. Without the proper protection, these hospitals can't function or operate. Now, we've also seen hospitals used in Gaza as shields or as forward operating bases for their militaristic activities. And because of that, their healthcare system has fully collapsed over there. I mean, they're doing triage and treatment in the middle of the streets, and there's no stability when it comes to surgery at all. There's no surgical services offered any longer in that entire area. And that's because there is no safety of the healthcare facilities there within. We also know that medical facilities will be targeted for their drugs and for their equipment or anything else that might have value. And especially in a slow burn collapse, which is kind of the most likely scenario that we're facing here in the United States. In a slow burn collapse scenario, organized gangs, criminals are likely to take over healthcare facilities in order to prioritize treatment of their own people and to steal the drugs and everything else there within, which they can then obviously sell in a black market scenario. So there's a lot of reasons why malicious actors will target a healthcare facility, which is why, as a prepared citizen, this is getting out of control. As a prepared citizen, you should be planning and strategizing now how you'll help to protect your community's healthcare facilities, especially if you have family that needs healthcare throughout a crisis. You know, if you have anyone elderly in your immediate family, or somebody who has special medication requirements, or possibly is being treated for a disease like cancer or something along those lines, they need these facilities to be up and running. But there's just no reason to believe that healthcare workers are going to risk their lives continuously, I can't speak because the wind is blowing the words out of my mouth, throughout a crisis scenario, just to help you and your family if they're constantly in an unsafe environment and feel that no one is offering the level of protection that they require. So if the community's not willing to come together and protect these people while they're doing the best they can to help everyone get through this crisis, then why would they want to continue to serve the community? And we're seeing some of that happening in Ukraine right now as well when it comes to how it's being remedied, okay? A good example of it is actually the dentistry industry over there. So dental is a big deal, and of course it's still part of healthcare. And we all know dental health can wreck somebody very quickly when it comes to, you know, rotten tooth or needing a root canal or the pain induced by your teeth having issues. I mean, it's really, really difficult to overcome. So in Ukraine right now, a lot of the dentists have joined the armed forces, which helps them to not only still operate in the sense of giving people dental care, but it also gives them protection because the armed forces are there with them to help protect and fortify whatever area they're operating out of. But they've also adapted to the scenario by adopting mobile dentistry. And now the dentists are mobile, which means they're not going to have to stay in one location that could be susceptible to missile strikes or who knows what else. But they're also under the protection of the armed forces while they're visiting troops on the front lines or going to trenches or wherever else they might be heading to in order to make sure everybody's getting the dental health they require. So that gives you an example of what is necessary for them to keep operating their medical care. They need protection. They need guarantees that things are going to be put into place in order to maintain their safety. And in some capacities, they might have to convert over to a mobile type scenario. So that way, if the facility itself is damaged or no longer operable, they can still get to the people who need that health care, of course, while under armed escort. So seeing what's happening in Gaza, seeing what's happening in Ukraine regarding healthcare, and the fact that even the World Health Organization thinks prioritizing the protection of healthcare facilities and healthcare workers is highly important, there's no reason to believe that you shouldn't have a plan in place or be concerned about having to do the same thing in your community if we face any similar crisis or any long-term scenario, especially regarding some of these infrastructure attacks coming from overseas. And if that's something that happens, are you at least in the mindset of knowing you might have to offer some security to these people in order to help them feel comfortable with continually giving service? Or have you at least talked to your group about the idea of having to maybe run shifts in order to maintain stability in your community? There's a lot of things that you should be considering now regarding, you know, what healthcare services are being offered in your area and how you can help them maintain their ability to supply that service when necessary, right? So we can do what we can on our own when it comes to first aid, when it comes to learning about different remedies and medicinal herbs or anything else that might be applicable to keeping somebody alive post an emergency situation. But we all know that for the stability of a community, and when I say that I mean like an entire town, right? Having access to an actual facility could be the difference of life or death for a lot of the people who live within your community. And by maintaining the stability and the structure of that, it might help to maintain the stability and structure of your entire community. Similarly to making sure the grocery store maintains, I don't know, some level of decorum or some level of organization that isn't just everyone ransacking it day one, right? So I just wanted to put this out there. It's a vulnerability that we should be aware of here in the preparedness community, but it's also one that as a prepared citizen, you might have to step up and actually help to maintain that stability during a time of crisis. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. Let me know if you have any strategies or have talked about this with your group and what everybody's thought process might be on it. I'm sure if you live in a smaller community, you already know at least one person who works at your healthcare facility, just because that's generally how it goes. But this is something I had on my mind and I wanted to share with everybody. Anything else you need from me at all, go to magicprepper.com. And besides that, that's going to be it for Magic Prepper.